Now, the next person I have been given to introduce, I really don't think needs a big introduction because it is our chair, Mr. Philip Benwell. So I don't think I'm going to say anything because everyone here should know everything about him. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Philip Benwell, our chair of the Australian Monarchist League. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Now, I would like to open with recognising the Honourable Eric Abetz. Now, Eric has been involved in the Australian Monarchist League for many years. He served as our Deputy National Chairman. He then became our campaign chairman when we were preparing for an eventual campaign on a referendum. And then he went back into politics, became a member for Franklin, and is now the leader of the House and Minister of XYZ and ZYX, virtually doing almost everything in the Tasmanian government. And he spared time to be able to come up to Sydney this morning to be with us. And he will be flying back early tomorrow morning to perform duties in Tasmania. So thank you very much. We're delighted to have you with us. Another person who wanted to be with us today but was unable to do so is the current Federal Shadow Attorney General, Michaelia Cash. She had been in Sydney this morning, but flew out and couldn't change her flight to stay and be with us even for a short time. However, she has sent this message.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a tremendous pleasure to address the Australian Monarchist League's 2024 National Conference. The reason I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to talk about our constitutional monarchy is because it is an opportunity to talk about the things that unify our great country. Because in the last year, we've faced some extraordinary challenges. The Voice, which would have made unprecedented changes to our constitution, dividing Australia on the basis of race. The disintegration of our social cohesion, and you only need to see protesters carrying the flags of listed terrorist organisations to know that support for our values is under threat. The assault on our national symbols, which is embodied by the rejection of Australia Day, and in due course, no doubt, attacks on our flag. And the cynicism in the halls of power. We are dealing with a Prime Minister who has repeatedly failed to stand up for Western liberal democratic values, enabling the social unrest we are seeing today. A Prime Minister who nominated a Republican to our highest office. A Prime Minister who directed a Minister of the Crown to deliver an Australian Republic. My friends, our system of constitutional monarchy is the antithesis of those things. It is the values and strength that we are embedded in our system that make Australia the envy of the world. Our national anthem used to describe Australia as young and free. Under the former coalition government, those words were amended, and we now quite rightly describe ourselves as one and free. I say quite rightly, not only because Australia is a country that brings a British foundation together with an Indigenous heritage and a multicultural character. It often escapes attention that Australia is the 6th oldest continuous democracy in the world. Our country was not born in conquest or revolution, but in peace and with a vote. We, as the peoples of 6 colonies spread across a vast continent, agreed to unite in one federal commonwealth, and the very first clause of our constitution establishes a commonwealth. Parliament that consists of the Senate and the House of Representatives under the Crown. It is a system which has generated tremendous stability, which in turn fosters prosperity and peace. It is also a system that guarantees liberty. One of the blessings of our Constitution is that it entrenches an apolitical sovereign, ensuring that people have the freedom to choose who in effect governs us. It is no mistake that the Charter of the Commonwealth expressly recognises the inalienable right of individuals to participate in democratic processes through fair and free elections. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the monarchy unifies. We live in a polarised world, and we have one institution that is about bringing us together. One about service, not power. One about the timelessness of our story, rather than the divisions of today. Like our beloved Queen Elizabeth II, King Charles's life has been a life of service. Even now, despite an extremely grave diagnosis, he consistently puts others ahead of himself. In the next generation, the Princess of Wales is doing the exact same thing. Their example of service before self is a model to which we should all aspire. So my message to you is very simple. Carry on. Carry on telling the story, particularly to our younger Australians. The story about values and strength, and pride in a system that brings us together and provides us with stability, prosperity, and freedom. I wish you all the very best for your annual conference. Thank you, and God save you.
I would mention that these sentiments are shared by a number of the senior coalition shadow ministers who will form a cabinet under a Dutton government if the coalition wins the next election. And many of them are not only monarchists, but active supporters of the Australian Monarchist League. Last Saturday, as many of you know, was the 25th anniversary of the 1999 Republic referendum. As with last year's voice referendum, the defeat of the 1999 Republic referendum sent shockwaves throughout the baby boomer elitist establishment, later to be termed the woke. The national result of 55% no, with states such as Queensland at 63% no, and WA, SA and Tasmania nearing 60% no. And one should never speak last. and only the ACT had a yes majority of 63%.
They fell for the misinformation.
But as a territory, fortunately, it only counted towards the national vote and not as a state, which is something the Albanese government were looking at in a future referendum. Even today, a quarter of a century on, there are those who are still putting down the part played by the Australian Monarchist League and taking all the credit for themselves. But the fact is, so much time has passed that no one today, including ourselves, really take any notice. These people forget that the Republic was defeated not by them and not by us, but by the people themselves, just as the referendum of the voice to the Parliament was defeated not by politicians, but by the people. I can remember that there was a meeting organised by a senior politician in 1999 to try to resolve issues that somehow arose between monarchist groups. She came to see me afterwards, and I can still remember her flopping into a chair and saying, "Philip, it's useless. We will just continue to do our own thing." And that is what we have done ever since. And over the years, we have stood against the alliances of Republicans, of media, of politicians and big business, and without any support from the outside, have been extremely successful in putting down moves towards a republic, so that today our freedoms and our democracy under the Crown still remains intact. In May 2022, Anthony Albanese came to power with a Republican agenda, but chose firstly to test the waters with his voice to the Parliament. One of the greatest errors he has ever made in his entire political career. He misjudged the way in which the Australian people value their constitution, that his idea of a referendum in his next term of government, if he has one, can now be considered to be a pipe dream. That is because he put everything he had into promoting what was widely seen as a very flawed proposal, that the devastating defeat of the voice referendum was laid almost entirely at his feet. And what is worse is that his inconsistent verbosity and political manoeuvrings, together with his so-called Aboriginal Advisory Council, set back by years any hope of resolving the issues facing the Indigenous people. What that defeat also did was to send a clear message to politicians to keep their hands off the people's constitution. It would now be a very brave Prime Minister who would seek to implement constitutional change in the future. However, the way the political alliances are formed, anything can happen following an election, and anything can happen following the next general election in 6 months' time or before. It is worth remembering that if Australia were like the UK and other Westminster systems, where Parliament and not the people are in charge of the Constitution, we would have become a republic decades ago, and the entire proposal for the voice would have easily passed the Parliament. And this is something we need to watch very, very carefully, because the massive array of elitist corporations and politicians, together with what is now called the woke, who all combined to push through the voice and failed, would now realize that they have to get rid of the Constitution to enable them to achieve their aims. In fact, the inclusion of Section 128, the referendum proposal, was strongly argued against by none other than British ministers in the lead up to 1900, when the referendum proposal was being put through the British Parliament. They considered it to be alien to Westminster, under which the Parliament was supreme. But our founding fathers insisted that Section 128 remain as the People's Constitution, so that today that very Constitution remains in the hands of the Australian people and not in the hands of our politicians, making the people and not the Parliament supreme in the end, something our politicians should remember and remember well. Present company accepted. As far as the Australian Monarchist League is concerned, we continue to remain vigilant, closely monitoring and responding to any Republican moves. This vigilance was crucial in 2000 and beyond, when efforts were made to remove allegiance to the Queen from various groups, including Scouting and Girl Guides. Today, few once loyalist organisations openly pledge allegiance to the monarch. The tradition of toasting the King's health has virtually disappeared, even amongst those who still enjoy royal or vice-regal patronage. Throughout the years, there has been the gradual removal of the symbols, the emblems, and the instruments of our constitutional monarchy. In 2022, when Anthony Albanese became Prime Minister, he immediately began dismantling anything that was symbolic of the monarchy. His first move was to remove the Queen's cipher from the gates of Kirribilli House. We saw the monarch's image removed from the $5 note, the Opera House not being lit up for the King's coronation, and there was also no coronation medal, no coronation coin, and no coronation stamp. The Albanese government has been pushing through changes to any legislation bearing the name of Queen Elizabeth II to replace the name not with King Charles III, but with sovereign. This, of course, means that even the King's name is being pushed aside as though we were already a republic. To top it all, the Great Seal of Australia, which was last changed in 1973 to update the existing seal to include the words Elizabeth II, Queen of Australia, now includes no indication whatsoever that it is the King's Great Seal. This is the new seal, and this was the seal of Elizabeth II. The Royal Standard of Australia does not bear the King's cipher, but merely the heraldic badges of the Australian states. As you will see from this image, there is no King's cipher. As you will see from the Queen's Royal Standard, you have her cipher and the crown. This is republicanism by stealth, happening even now. Albanese has removed the Assistant Minister for the Republic. We cannot trust him, and we cannot trust any Labour government because they have as their policy a republic for Australia. We also now have a Governor-General who has clearly indicated, both in her acceptance speech and in other commentary, that she intends to be an activist Governor-General, pushing causes close to her heart. She has already given one or more interviews to the media veering on the political. We also saw during the royal visit the Governor-General taking almost centre stage, something unheard of on previous royal tours. It is pertinent to note that the Governor-General, in a presidential manner, took the salute for the Australian national anthem at the gathering at Parliament House a few weeks ago. And King Charles took the salute for God Save the King. Still can't get over the Queen. But God Save the King was referred to as the British anthem, as though Charles was representing the UK and not Australia as King of Australia, and that the Governor-General herself was representing Australia. It is wrong and it should not happen. However, this is a matter to be handled with delicacy, because the Governor-General is now the King's representative. And I will say no more at this stage about that. But what I will say, and say emphatically, about the royal tour is that the Australian Monarchist League did a magnificent job in handing out over 10,000 Australian flags to crowds that enthusiastically gathered in both Canberra and in Sydney. There's a Republican somewhere. we'll see the pictures. The montage is thanks to Alessandro. So thank you, Alessandro. And we will play that and try and get the sound back, whoever took it, later at the dinner. Now I would like to give our grateful thanks to our volunteers and to our donors who helped pay for the flags. AML did its part, a part that we have always played during all royal tours over the past 25 years. A magnificent achievement which is due to all those people that came out over all those years to stand up for our Constitution and to stand up for Australia. I can reminisce slightly that during the Queen's tour in 2000, we were distributing flags at the Opera House. As some may remember, the Queen was not able to visit Australia during the Republican debate, and it was some time, or some years, before she was able to visit, but immediately the people had their say and rejected a republic. The Queen made plans to visit her country of Australia. Now, in distributing the flags, our team ran out, and they rushed to $2 shops to purchase whatever Australian flags they could and rush back to the Opera House to hand them out. Unfortunately, it was pouring with rain, and the flags weren't, they were cheap flags. They were all they could get. And the blue dye ran out onto the people's hands as they were waving them. So when the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh walked along, you had dozens of blue-coloured hands stretched out to shake them. But I'm sure that when the Queen and Prince Philip sat down afterwards, they would have had a good laugh. In 1994, soon after AML was reformed, we had a reception on the rooftop of the Astor, which is in Macquarie Street overlooking the Botanic Gardens. And I can remember announcing with great pride at that time that we had reached our 100th member. Today, 30 years on, we have well over 1,000 financial members, but our email database has swelled to thousands of people, so that any email we send out is read by thousands and opened by thousands. The statistics of visitors to our website for the month of October, according to Google, showed that our website had 144,000 page views. These figures are actually staggering for a volunteer-run organization, relying on membership fees and contributions from our supporters. Because don't forget, we don't have any government funding, we don't have any corporate funding. We are reliant upon the amounts that our supporters donate to us. Everything that has been done is a significant achievement due to the support of all those who support our constitutional monarchy. I would also like to thank our visitors from Queensland and from Western Australia, our students who have paid their own way and their own accommodation to be with us today. That takes commitment, and it's a commitment that will see us move on into the future. That is a commitment on the part of, yes, of course, Victoria. We have Chris Jones. Sorry. But he's not really a student. But it takes commitment on the part of our young people to pay for their travel and accommodation to be with us. And we are grateful to them because the young are our future. But everyone today deserves our thanks. Everyone out there that supports us deserves our thanks. And as we move on, we hope that time will treat us well. So may God bless you all, and thank you for coming today, and I hope that you have enjoyed today's conference, that you have found it interesting and enjoyable. So thank you, one and all. And we have closed 10 minutes early.